Hello everyone, thank you for watching Edupedia World videos. So in this video, this is part 7 video of the CTS, the change in the transport system. We are going to discuss about various transactions and tools in CTS. Okay, so far we have learned about the various terminology which is used in CTS. Now we'll see the actual transactions, okay, which are a part of the change and the transport system in SAP. Now, transactions and tools in CTS. The change and transport system provides you with tools for recording the changes you make to the repository objects and customizing objects, and for distributing these changes within the system landscape. So in CTS, first you make changes to the repository and customizing data, and you move that, okay, in the system landscape. The CTS offers the team members of a software development or implementation project transactions in the SAP system and programs at operating system level. So the CTS, it comes up with a set of transactions and tools at the SAP level as well as the OS level also. Now, the first one is the transport organizer. This provides the functions for creating, documenting, and releasing change requests during the customizing and development process. The transport organizer is designed specifically for use by the development team and the project managers of a development or implementation project. Now, the first part of CTS is the transport organizer. Okay. So this provides various functions for you create, you document, and you release the change requests during the customizing and the development process. Okay, so this transport organizer is more used by the development team. Okay, so the transport organizer is where the change requests are created, documented, and released. Okay, so in last videos we have come across all this terminology like change request, customizing, repository. So that's why before seeing this video, please see the first 6 videos, okay, which explain about the various terminology used in CTS. Okay, so once you are through all the 6 videos, okay, then you will understand this video better. Okay, so that's why when we talk about change requests, customizing data, repository data, transport organizer, okay, so we have learned about all these terms in the earlier videos. Okay, so please go through the 6 videos, the earlier 6 videos, the basics of CTS, the transport strategy. Then if you go through this video, it will be easier for you to understand what we are talking about here. Now, so the transport organizer, it provides a set of functions for create, you document, and you release the change requests. Okay, and this is more used by the development team. Next, the transport management system. This supports administrators in organizing, performing, and monitoring inputs. The TMS also helps you to set up your system landscape, particularly the configuration of the transport routes. Now, the TMS is mostly used by the administrators for you have to organize, perform, and monitor the imports for moving these change requests in the system landscape for doing the imports. Okay, and initially when you install your systems, so this TMS also helps you to set up your system landscape, the transport routes. Okay, now the third one is the transport tools, TP and R3 trans. These are also very important. These are programs at operating system level. They do not usually have to be executed by the user directly, since they are called automatically by the CTS. The transport tools communicate with the SAP system and the database and export and import requests. Now the third tools are the actual transport tools, TP and R3 trans. So these are the commands at the operating system level. Okay, So when the actual the requests are exported and imported across the systems, okay, so the SAP triggers these functions in the operating system level. So these tools, they communicate with SAP and the database during the export and import process. Okay, so first in this video we'll see about the various functions in the transport organizer. In the next video we'll learn about the transactions related to the TMS, the transport management system, and after that we'll learn about TPN R3 trans programs. Okay, so now we have actually started learning the transactions which we can execute in SAP, okay, which form a part of the change in the transport system. Now, functions in transport organizer. We call the initial screen of the transport organizer with the transaction SE09 or SE10. So SE09 and or SE10 you call the transport organizer. You can also access the request overview of the transport organizer from all ABAP workbench transactions by choosing environment transport organizer requests. Yes, so we have read about this earlier also. You can navigate to the transport organizer from the ABAP as well as the customizing tools. Okay, the display function lets you search for all requests that belong to the specified user and match the standard selection criteria set. You can change the standard selection criteria as required. Okay, so when you display it, okay, you see all the requests which match your selection criteria. So the first transactions are in transport organizer SE09 and SE10. These two transactions are used to call the transport organizer. So if we see the transport organizer initial screen, okay, so this is how SE9 or SE10 looks like. Okay, so you give the username and you get, okay, you select the request type, whether it's a customizing request, a workbench request, transport of copies or relocations. Okay, so these are the different types of requests and the request status, whether it's modifiable or released. Modifiable means it's yet not released from the development system. Okay, released means the ones which are released from the development system and they are ready to get imported into the QA or prod or so whatever it is. Okay, so we have the status here and the type here. You give the username, okay, and then if you say in display, okay, so you'll get all the requests which were created by that particular user. Okay, and from the screen also you can create a new request too. So this is the initial screen of SE9 or SE10, that is the transport organizer. Now change requests. Change requests are managed by transport organizer. Changes to customize repository and customizing objects are recorded in change requests. So we have learned earlier also about the term change requests. So whatever change you try to make or whatever development you create in the system, okay, so that should be recorded under a change request. Okay, so that you can differentiate between global changes to the system and client specific customizing settings. The CTS records your changes either in a workbench or a customizing request. So we have two types of changes as we have learned earlier. One is the cross client or the global changes to the system, and the other one is the client specific, okay, settings. So whatever change request you create, it can either be a workbench or a customizing request. So generally customizings are client specific and cross client customizing and repository are mostly cross client. Okay, so they all belong to the workbench and client specific, we have customizing requests also. Now, workbench request. When you change a repository object of the above workbench, a query window appears in which you need to specify a workbench request. Okay, so however, you can only save the changes if you have assigned the object to a change request. Now, whenever you change a repository object in the above workbench, okay, you go and click the change button, then you will get this change request screen, okay, where you have to give the request number. Okay, so that is the workbench request. Now you can start making changes only when this particular whatever change you have initiated to the object is assigned to a change request. Okay, so you can continue. Once you click that modify button, you can only carry out with the changes whatever you want to do only when you have assigned that particular object to a change request. Workbench requests and tasks assigned to them are normally used to record changes to the repository objects in customizing for all clients. However, you can also include client specific customizing. Okay, so workbench requests generally include the changes to the repository objects. And cross-client customizing. Whenever the changes to the repository objects are transported, depends on whether a transport route is defined from the current SAP system for the development class of these objects. From the system settings, the system automatically determines whether the change requests are transportable and to which target system they should be transported. So when these repository objects are transported, okay, so it depends on whether the transport route is defined from the current SAP system for the development class of these objects. So that's what we have learned about transport routes and transport layers. So whenever these changes are made, so we should have a predefined transport route also. From the system settings, the system automatically determines whether the change requests are transportable and to which target system they should be transported. So because the transport routes are predefined, they are laid earlier during the system implementation. So when you change an object, you create a change request, okay, so the target, the source is the development, so the target, whether it's a QA or a test or whatever it is, that is automatically fetched by the system. Okay, now customizing requests. Customizing requests record client specific customizing settings made in a single client, the source client of the request. So when we have client specific customizing data and any changes which are made to that data, so that is recorded in a customizing request. Automatic recording of configuration activities in the customizing work for a client can be activated or deactivated for each client with client control. So this recording of configuration activities, okay, across client customization means it's generally something system configuration you are trying to change. So for a particular client, you can activate or deactivate this automatic recording of the configuration activities. Okay, so even that facility is also there. If automatic recording is active, a query window appears when you change customizing settings, asking you to specify a customizing request. Whether customizing requests are transported or not does not depend on the objects entered, as in the case with workbench change requests. So if you initiate automatic recording, okay, so whenever you try to change the customizing data, you are prompted with a window which will ask you for the customizing requests. Okay, so they might or they might not be transported, okay, but they will be recorded under a change request. That's what. So it's not always that when you record any change in a change request it has to be transported. You can transport it or you need not transport it, but to record whatever change you have made, it should be saved under a change request. The customizing requests in an SAP system or in a client, if you use extended transport control, are either all transportable or all local, depending on the system settings. Okay, so you can transport them, or they can be local change requests. They need not be transported. The system uses the standard transport layer to determine automatically whether the change requests are transportable and to which target system they should be transported. However, you can change this manually. Depending upon the transport route and layer, here also automatically the target will be determined. Okay, so any change, whether it's workbench or customizing or whatever it is, if you do any change to an customizing object or a repository object, it will be recorded in a workbench request or a customizing request. So workbench request will include, workbench change request will include all the changes to the repository data, which is generally cross-client, and all the cross-client customizing changes. And you can also include client-specific customizing changes in a workbench request also. Now, coming to customizing requests, here client-specific customized data, when it's changed, it is recorded under a customizing request. And for each client, you can automatically activate or deactivate this changes. This changes can be recorded automatically or not. Okay, so there is, SAP provides with that setting also at client level. Okay, so no matter whether you transport this customizing request or not, whenever you change any data in the client, if automatic recording is activated, so that change will be recorded under a customizing request. Now, so see, if you see the OC, this is how you get prompted. Okay, so create object directory entry, it's under, so here see, you're trying to change something, so you are prompted for a change request. Okay, so there in the change request, you will have like whatever, you know, package it's belong to, the person responsible who is changing it, and here see, it's an enhancement, you have a name and a short name and a comment at the back, create change request. Okay, and create object directory entry. So that's what, whenever you try to modify anything, okay, so that should be recorded in a change request mandatorily, whether it's a repository data or whether it's a customizing data, whatever it is. Now see, we have different global settings here, logistics, financial accounting. Okay, so we have the customizing objects. Okay, so in these areas, whenever we are trying to change anything, okay, we have a change request. Okay, and each change request will have at least one task. It can have multiple tasks. Okay, so this change request has only one task. This change request has two tasks. This change request has only one task. Here these two tasks are worked by two different users. Okay, so that's how. So in a change request, you can include multiple tasks, but at least it should have one task mandatorily. So whenever you try to modify any object, you will get a screen prompting for the change request to be entered, and there further you enter the package and the person who is changing it, and through package it will determine like what is the transport layer it has to move, the route. Okay, so that's how everything is linked here. Or you can save it as a local object also. Local object means it's not transported, it will just be in the system. You have made some change, you have request, you have, you know, created a change request for that. Okay, but it's a local one, so it doesn't get transported. Transport organizer, the extended view. You can call the initial screen of the extended view of the transport organizer with the transaction SE01. Now, the actual transport organizer is called with SE9 or SE10. Now, we have an extended view also of the transport organizer. So, using SE01, you can call it. You can access this transaction from the standard transport organizer by choosing environment transport organizer extended view. So here, from here, this SE9 or SE10, you can, from here environment, you can navigate to the extended view. This is the screen for extended view. Here only from user level we can display or whatever change request we can see, but here you have different other selection criteria, like you can give the transport request name, or you can tell whether it's a pieceless or the client or the delivery trans. These are different types of transports. Okay, so here you have a wider selection criteria. Okay, so here you can only see the transports, but here you can see the pieceless in the delivery transports, etc. Everything you can see. So here also you give the username, but this from in SE01 you can view special transports like pieceless, the client transports, the delivery transports, and the individual normal transport display. Okay, extra transport types are provided in the extended view to meet any special requirements. Okay, so these are different other types of transports which generally we don't handle them. There may be a situation where we might require to create client transports or pieceless or delivery transports or whatever it is. Those are called as special transports. Okay, so that we can view or create them from SE01. So SE01 is nothing but it's a superset of SE9 or SE10. Unlike the workbench and customizing requests, there are no automatically assigned transport routes for the transport types described here. Similarly, these requests do not follow configured deliveries. So for the workbench and customizing requests, they are assigned a transport route and a layer, but these special transports, okay, like pieceless or whatever client transports they are, they do not follow the standard SAP transport routes. Okay, so when you create them, you have to create their targets also and how they need to be transported. Since some of these request types have their own naming conventions and you cannot search by owner for all the request types, the extended view of the transport organizer was designed with 5 different selection screens. So generally the normal transport you can search with the username. However, the other ones you can't directly search with the username. Okay, the pieceless, the client transports, and the delivery transports. Okay, so SE01 is for the wider view of transports, the special transports. Request overview. You can access the request overview of the transport organizer directly from all above workbench transactions and customizing transactions with utilities transport organizer requests. Okay, so the request overview, then the entire request, you can overview of this transport organizer. You can come to this transport organizer from the above workbench and customizing transactions also. Okay, so there if you go utilities and you can say transport organizer. So that's what we have discussed this point earlier, that you can navigate from transport organizer to the ABAP workbench or the customizing transactions. Similarly, you can navigate from the ABAP workbench transactions or the customizing transactions to the transport organizer. You can access the request overview of the extended view of the transport organizer from the initial screens of the transaction SE01 by choosing display. The requests are grouped and displayed under hierarchy of sort nodes corresponding to the following request attributes. So you have the source system, the source client, the transport target, the owner, request type, request status, and project. So see here, see, this is if you view a particular transport. Okay, so this transportable is modifiable, so that is the request status. Okay, and this is the source system. So here it was developed. Okay, and this is the user which has created that change request, this test underscore user. Now you have the request and you have the task under it. Okay, see, so you have the source system, you have the source client, it is something 110 unit test, you have the source system and the source client, then the transport target, the request owner, request type, and request status. So request owner you have, okay, and the request type, customizing request, okay, and the status, it's in modifiable status still, it's not yet released it. And the top node is the request, change request number, and the sub node gives you the task number. Okay, so that's what from the screen. If you give some selection criteria like the username, if you select what type of request it is, okay, and the status, and if you select display, so you will get all the requests under that user. So there you will come to know whether what type of request it is. Here it's clearly saying like that's a customizing request involving user this. So this user has developed it. Okay, then whatever status you have and everything, so it's in modifiable status, so it's still not yet released from the development system. Okay, so you can select the request. Okay, now an important thing is while releasing the request, okay, you want to release some request, so first you have to release the task and then the request. So here this request is having only one task, but every request should have at least one task, but maximum it can have more than one task also. So first we have to select the task and then release, and then finally the actual change request, then you have to release it. Okay, so this you do from transport organizer. So whenever you try to modify an object, you will get a screen prompting the change request. So you can give the change request name, the description, okay, the comments, you save it, then okay, in the object directory entry you will give the package name and the person responsible, whatever it is, all those things. See here the original system is dev. You save it. You save it whether it's a local object. If you save it as a local object, it can't be transported. So once you are done with your modification, you go to SE9 or SE10 or SE01, which are the transport organizer transactions. So there you can create and display the requests also. Okay, so when you display the request under a user, so this is how it looks. And one more thing, so here also you have a chance, okay, to create the request. Okay, so from the transport organizer you can create the change request and you can give the same name here. Understand? So that's how more than one task can be included in the change request. Okay, so now you are modifying this program. Okay, you have included in the change request. Now you went to another, you know, the sub program. Okay, so there you have done some modifications. You can include it in the same change request. You need not create a different change request. Okay, so they will be stored as different tasks in the same change request. Okay, so whenever the different modifications, say in a program you have different sub modules, you are changing each one of them. Okay, so while changing each of the sub module, you can create a single change request, and all these changes to the sub modules can be included as different tasks in the request. So the change request you can create from SE9 or SE10 or SE01, and then you can assign it when each of the changes made, or directly when the change is made. It's you know, always a change request screen will be prompted. Okay, and from this transport organizer you can view it. Okay, and from transport organizer only you generally release the change request. This is where you have to release the change request. And one more thing is you have to release the task first and then the change request. Okay, so that is important. So this transport organizer gives an overview of change requests. It's not only about the normal transports like the customizing or the workbench, these change requests are displayed, but the other special transport types like pieceless, client transports, the delivery transports, okay, even those are displayed from the extended view of the transport organizer using SE01. So don't get confused. If anybody asks about transport organizer, it can be viewed from three screens: SE9, SE10, SE01. SE01 is the superset of 9 and 10. Okay, now SE09 and SE10 are the subset of this SE01. Okay, so this is about transport, the transactions which are used in the transport organizer. Okay, so now in the next coming videos we learn about the transactions which are used in the transport management system. Okay, and the other transport tools like TP and R3 trans. One more thing is, generally this transport organizer related transactions are mostly used by the developers, because the developers are the persons who actually make modifications to the objects and create change requests. So that's why the transport organizer provides functions for creating, documenting and releasing change requests during the customization and development process. Okay, and the transport organizer is designed specifically for use by the development team and project managers of a development or a implementation project. Okay, so whenever the modifications are made in the system, a customer customizing or a workbench request, they are recorded under a change request. Okay, so the developers most use this transport organizer transactions. They mostly use them. And you have two types of change requests. One is the workbench and the other is customizing. Workbench is the cross client data, customizing is the client specific data. Okay, so you have basically two types of change requests, workbench and customizing. And in customizing, there is a setting where you can activate it at the client level. So it says like whether the automatic recording of the changes made to the customizing data is activated in the client or not. So there, no matter whenever you do any change, a request window is always prompted, and you can transport it or you can keep it as a local request also. Okay, so this is how the change request is. You do some modification, you will be prompted for a change request screen, and the other details will have to be given there. You have to save it. Now, SE01 is the extended view of the transport organizer. So there, apart from the standard transports, you can display the piece list, the client transports and the delivery transports also. And the other thing we have seen is, so whenever we display any request in the transport organizer, okay, so this is how you see it. You see the request type, the user, the source system, the source client, okay, the client and the source system, and the status of the request name and the tasks which are under that, and even the documentation also. You have to give a proper documentation for the change request, otherwise nobody will know. Okay, to track it at a later point of time, say if you give the program name, okay, and if you want to know the different changes under that, it will be very difficult. So documentation of the change request is very, very important. Okay, see, today I am a developer, I am working in some company, I have made some changes. Okay, I have made some very good changes to an object, I have created a change request, but I didn't document it. That is very bad. Okay, because later when I change my role, somebody comes into my role, or not on, say I'm on leave or something, they are not able to contact me, how will the other people track the changes? Everybody can't remember the change request number, right? So that's why we have to keep a proper documentation for the change request. So later, if basis team or somebody, okay, if in my absence, they'll be able to track. So they can search on the text, depending upon the text. Okay, so I'll give like, this is the ticket number. So under this ticket number, I'm creating a transport request so and so for this role, or for this program, or for this sub program. Like that, we have to be very much clear. Okay, and generally in a support, when you go to a support or implementation phase, like you have some ticketing tool, whatever it is. Okay, so it's very good to give the include that ticket number also, whatever tool you can be using it. Okay, whether it's a clear request or a remedy, or we have n number of ticketing tools. Okay, so if you are making that change under a particular ticket, so please include that ticket number also and give a proper description so that somebody else will be able to track it, like, oh, this change request is for this change. Okay, and the other thing is the change request name. Okay, it starts with generally the naming convention is the SID of the development box where it's developed. So here the development box is, the original system is DV, the development box. See here the change request and the tasks, they're starting with DEV, K and 9 and some number. Okay, so later, okay, in the next videos we'll discuss about this also. Okay, so the naming convention of a change request, but as of now please remember the first 3 letters of the change request and its task, it starts with the SID of the development system. Okay, so say like GBA is my development system, so my change requests which are created in this GBA system, they all start with GBA, that is the SID of the development box where it's developed, followed by certain numbers. Okay, K, or it can be T, whatever it is. Okay, so that we'll see in the probably in the next videos. Okay, so the naming convention of this change request, but the first 3 letters are the SID of the development box where it's created, the change request. Okay, so this is about transport organizer and the change request. Okay, the basics of transport organizer and change request. Thank you.